Thank you, everybody who's still here. I'm very happy to be here. Thank you so much for the invitation to be a part of DLD. This is actually the first time I've been here. To start, I thought it would be worthwhile to give a little bit of context before talking about the projects that myself and Jakob have been working together on over the last, well, this week, in fact. So, coming from the Serpentine Galleries in London, I'm sure you've heard from Hans-Ulrich Obrist, the artistic director who's here with us. The gallery in London it's been running, it's our 50th anniversary next year. It's a gallery that gives free access to art. Over the course of the last 6 years, I've been working alongside Hans-Ulrich to kind of ask the question of what is the 21st century art institution? And central to that question has been working with artists to explore software as an artistic medium. And over that time, we've conducted a number of experiments with artists from creating, I'm actually going to show some videos of some of those individual works. The rationale for wanting to work with artists and technology is because I think many people here right now will understand that technology has been expressed as a sort of monoculture over the last few decades, and that we're in desperate need of bringing in new narratives, new perspectives, and really thinking, where is technology going to take us over the next 10, 20, 50 years? So the first work I wanted to share is Bob. Bob stands for Bag of Beliefs. It was a project that we developed a couple of years ago with the artist Ian Cheng. Bob is an artificial intelligence, a life form that draws from the theories of Ursula Le Guin, research at DeepMind. The structure of the artificial intelligence is a kind of multi-agent actor. So Bob isn't one artificial intelligence. It's constructed from many artificial intelligences that are derived from Carl Jung's idea of the archetype and the idea of many identities, that we're not just one identity. Another work that I wanted to share, oh no, I've totally killed it with the video there. They were all joined together. But the second work that I wanted to share was with Hito Steil. We developed last year an app called Actual Reality OS, and that turned the gallery into a data visualizer that would represent the social context that the Serpentine Galleries finds itself in. So the Serpentine is located in one of the areas of greatest wealth inequality in the UK. And what we wanted to do was use augmented reality as a means to show those kind of invisible statistics. So we turned the gallery into an AR app that you'd be able to represent data in real time. Myself and Jakob started working together last year on a project called, in the frame of augmented architecture. And what we were trying to explore was how architecture and that kind of spatial field can bring new thinking to augmented reality. And what Jakob developed for it was something called the Deep Listener, which was a kind of ecological trail that led you around Hyde Park in central London, where the Serpentine is located, and you were able to interact with individual species in that space. Now, I'd like to introduce Jakob, and I will not make the mistake of pressing too quickly through your video when we share this work. But Jakob Kudsk Steensen is an artist, art director. He specializes in working with natural history museums and field biologists to create large-scale immersive projects. And I think we want to share this one. So I'll hit play.
Yes.
Do you want to say a bit about it before we show it?
So I included a short little video. It's a good example of what I make. I pretty much use technology to change how we can listen to other species or our perception of time. So this is an audio visualization of an extinct bird. So I interviewed the last person that saw that bird on his memory of encountering, his kind of emotions of working through something that's been lost, which I also think is an interesting theme with nature, like things been going extinct and thinking about what mortality kind of is. But we'll just play it, and it's a good example of how I work with sound, visualizations, archives, field biology to change how people are sensing the kind of natural world around us. we can stop it for now.
So, this week we found ourselves in a rather surreal situation that over the course of the last 3 months, myself and Jakob have been part of a project that involves the largest boy band in the world, K-pop sensation, BTS. BTS, quite incredibly, kind of share the mantra of the Serpentine and this idea that we need to bridge worlds and, kind of really work to identify the difference between what we do, but really appreciate that difference. And so BTS came to us and they wanted to work together to commission a series of works. And this was a kind of really incredible experience. I don't think either me or Jakob or anybody involved quite comprehended what it was going to be like to have the biggest K-pop in the world, the biggest K-pop band in the world, talk about the power of art and how art can transform your everyday experience. I personally, it was a very moving experience for me on Tuesday because I was reminded of that moment as a teenager when I first encountered contemporary art and my mind was totally blown, and really realizing that the moment in which BTS talked about the power of art to change one's perspective and just kind of a call out to their 50 million fans to go to museums. So by the time that the press conference was an hour in, we already had BTS's fans, the army, turning up outside our doors. And I mean, Jakob, maybe you can speak a little bit about that experience, but just to say, in terms, we commissioned a new installation of Catharsis, which is a simulation of an old growth forest, which is sited at the Serpentine for the next couple of months. And it's really an extension of the work that we've done together on the Deep Listener and this kind of ongoing relationship to explore the intersection of ecology and technology. But perhaps maybe you want to share a little bit on this experience of having this conversation and what it was like to do that work this week.
Yes, I think in the context of this conference, this is exciting to me because it's a new way of thinking about partnerships for art and also distributing art and building new bridges between fields. So as an artist, I also come from video game development and then worked into the art world. So I have a lot of collaborators from music, from science, to games in many different fields. So all of a sudden we have this project launching through a K-pop band and their channels. So all of a sudden there are millions of people looking at the videos and the work online, and I received like hundreds of very detailed emails from their fans who are extremely engaged with the work, and all of a sudden you have these videos online where people analyze the artwork. So you all of a sudden have a very powerful engagement with an audience that I probably in the art world otherwise wouldn't have encountered. So it was a very strong opposite polar experience, and I think really building all sorts of new collaborations, new fields, new encounters is really important, especially if you're working with digital art that has the potential to spread viral. So this project really did that, and that's very exciting to me as an artist.
And one of the steps that we took, realizing that the audience for this work was going to be kind of truly international and global, was that so you can see in this shot, you've got the live stream of BTS, Jakob's here, and in the background just behind the artist Anthony Gormley is the LED screen. But what we realized was, a month into the production of the project, that really our audience was going to be online. So we can hopefully share the live stream of the work. I'm assuming that it's kind of a tall order to pull up a browser, but here we have the work of the simulation of the old growth forest that's being live streamed through the kind of online gaming service Twitch. Jakob, would you like to say a little bit about what this work is that we're seeing here?
Yeah, so all my work is based on pretty extensive field work. So I bring teams of collaborators from many different fields into landscapes. So this is based on California redwoods and some trees from the stuff of Catskills in the States, and some from Santa Fe. So I kind of make an impossible mix of different species, and they mix together. It's also some moss that I collected and 3D scanned in Mexico. And then it's just this one continuous shot through this forest, like something we can perceive in time and scale, just one long shot. But all the physics in this simulation follow different time scales. So the light moves, it takes like 12 minutes for a full day cycle. The water is sped up a little bit, and the wind is changing all the time. So you have different environmental timescales meeting each other. And we're not playing the sound right now, but when we normally show it, we have a big spatial system, something like up to 24 speakers, and that's like ASMR, so it's a very sensory soundtrack, and we get a lot of feedback also from all these fans from BTS that it's like kind of raises the hair on their arms, just the sound from it. So these videos, for example, have been shared really hundreds of thousands of times online, recordings of them and anything. So for me, it was really interesting that I've been here, I've been working with specific biologists in a specific location, and all of a sudden, it's like it really uses digital technology to distribute and kind of create all these new encounters.
And given that your work almost exclusively works with technology you build in games engines like Unreal, but what's very central and somewhat unique to what you bring to this is the kind of expeditions you go on. So whether it's like scuba diving in the ocean, or it's in the Camargue in Arles, you're working at the Luma Foundation at the moment to develop a new project. Yeah. Could you talk about the role of expeditions in your work and why, as being somebody that's developing with technology, you spend so much time in nature?
Yeah, I think that at least me growing up, I feel like I'm losing more and more a direct connection to worlds right in front of your feet. So the ability to kind of look at plants, look at really imaginative places that's in nature right in front of you, this kind of an engagement that I think a lot of people are losing. So I'm really spending a lot of time going to places that way, and it's important for me that to work with technology that there's a strong corporal element to it. So it's really important to feel all these things in nature and have like literally mud up to your waist. Or I went diving with a marine biologist on the Azores, working with like underwater vibrations and recording them for a future virtual reality project. So it's like this bodily engagement and trying to translate that to people through technology is in very imaginative and powerful ways is what I think is what I do as an artist. But I also think as myself just as kind of a culture practitioner working with technology, connecting people to environments.
And in some ways, I mean, you've chosen to, this work is an old growth forest, right? So many old growth forests have been cut down. There's less and less of them existing. In previous work, like Reanimated, you have brought the sound of extinct birds. You've documented the textures of extinct animals. To what degree are you kind of memorializing or attempting to preserve something in this moment? Or is it something entirely different to that?
Yeah, I think we live in a point in time where all of a sudden we have access to sounds of species, pictures of them, recordings of them, but they're gone in nature. And I think this will happen more and more in the future as different landscapes might disappear. So we have a kind of uncanny condition where we're living among ghosts in a way through these virtual archives of different species. So I really try to mix things together and create new worlds. But something that I think more and more about with this piece, with the deep listener that we did with the Serpentines, was this app where you're walking through a park and you can like influence the speed of sound of recordings of different species, so you can hear things you normally can't hear, is to create like inspiration, fascination, engagement, and kind of create something that instead of is commenting on what's happening in the world is like creating. So I want to like more and more participate in fields of content creation where like you might normally find Netflix or video games or a lot of things that people are very used to encounter in culture. I want to enter that more and more and really sincerely be able to create something that's attractive to people and they want to experience and feel kind of a kind of reimagination of nature. Yeah.
And one of the things that we talk a lot about at the Serpentine is the way in which artists bring entirely new narratives to how a technology can be shaped. And I think that one of the things that we're realizing as technologies begin to mature is that the narrative around a technology is not somehow separate to the technology. It's not just about a kind of marketing campaign, but it's part and parcel the way in which this thing kind of unfolds in the world. And the sense is working with artists with emerging technologies that there are these kind of new narratives that emerge in the production because I guess, essentially the drive towards producing these work isn't necessarily with a profit motive. It's not necessarily with a user base. So you have this huge kind of experimental lab that's kind of emerging in the art world, where you have artists that are coming from many, many different perspectives and many, many different intentions about what the role of technology can be. One of the ideas that you frequently express, Jakob, is this idea of a kind of slow media or a slow technology that's in some ways similar to the slow food movement or has resonance of that. I wonder if you could speak about what you think slow media is and why it's important.
Yeah, the reason I think about slow media is that up until maybe 4 years ago, I worked more as an art director, so I would produce projects for companies or studios. And there it's often you have this kind of top-down hierarchy where someone writes a story, someone builds the deck, and I think this is common for many fields today. And then this is taken to a production team or production studio, something that's then creating it on a tight deadline. So in my practice and working in the art world, and for the Serpentine, for example, I try to completely flip that model where there's an environment, there's some collaborators, and they might have interest in certain types of animation that is really colorful or tweaking sound in a way that they've never worked with before. So it's really engaging at a very practical and experimental level. So with technology and environments, and then through practice, through this experimentation, over long periods of time, some kind of coherence or project emerges from these encounters with environments and with different artists working on the projects. So more and more, I try to also enable artists who might work in other fields. My main collaborator right now creates sound for natural history museums, and there it's like he has to really stay true to all the sound. But what he really wants to do is play with them and create really sensory experiences from it. So he's coming from that world into the world that I work in, which is more the art world, where there's a history and way of thinking, that you can explore technology and mediums more just freely. So in the future, I really think more and more about how I can work with a network of people from other fields, and then build these teams and make these wild experiments, also with the field biologists that otherwise probably wouldn't happen at all.
Yeah, and that really touches on an interesting dynamic, because there will probably be many people here that are not necessarily familiar with the way in which the art field operates, but will be familiar with the idea that primarily you have the kind of individual artist. So authorship has, at least for the last century, been very much like, oh, longer than that, actually, much longer. Even if we do think back to kind of guild structures that were orientated around painting, we often don't think about that, particularly the way that museums communicate the vision of the individual artist. And what we've noticed, particularly in a lot of the projects that we've been developing, but is really pronounced in Jakob's work, is that that model of authorship is shifting dramatically. And you can see this kind of globally within different artistic practices. And part of that is as a result of the kind of diverse range of skills that are needed in order to articulate works like this, but also because in many ways we're moving to a more collaborative mode of operation. And we're also seeing the emergence of new kind of organizational forms like the guild structure in a kind of digital age that can facilitate an entirely different kind of art practice. And so I wanted to ask you, where do you see that going? You've worked as an artistic art director in different kinds of contexts. Many of your friends and collaborators are from the games industry. What is the model for you going forward?
Yes, I think what I would like to do is to make a model where we really connect the local fieldwork that biologists are doing in really niche areas, because all the funding they have is also really struggling. And then do these projects where we go and work with them and then translate their work into very powerful, imaginative virtual experiences and make this a whole platform. So in the end, there can also be other artists than me. It's almost like a company or a structure or something that's supporting fieldwork by biologists, but also use kind of viral virtual technologies to make people think about nature in a new way, or time, or life and death, like these very basic questions that I think works like that can facilitate.
And in terms of imagining the scale of that, so there's examples that have emerged in the last couple of years. The most prominent, perhaps, is like TeamLab, based in Tokyo, which is an artist company organization of 500 people. They now have created the single most visited individual artist museum in the world. This year, they had a kind of annual revenue turnover of 100 million plus. This is a radical shift, if people are not aware of these kind of changes that are beginning to happen in the art field, in such a way that many of those that are working in the kind of context that I am are only just beginning to grapple with those kinds of implications. And I wondered, in terms of, are we talking about a small indie games company in the context that you're talking about? Or are we talking about something that you could begin to call a kind of art stack, so it has some kind of equivalence with the larger stack technologies?
Yeah, we're out of time, so I will ask it super quickly. That I hope that what I would like to see is like really support a very ambitious structures that can create at the same level that like mainstream media are doing. But you build a big structure that can support very diverse and different practices. So maybe it's a big structure of 100 people, but they're like team of 5, team of 4, individual artists who get to explore how to build these new worlds, but at a scale where it can truly participate outside of the art world too, and at that level of production and everything.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes. I am working with art, so yeah.
Okay,
thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody.